That was so fancy. Oh my gosh. It's like we're professionals,
Imagine that.
right?
That's what you get when you have an actual IT person.
Woo! Look at this. We got background, all kinds of stuff. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending upon where you are. I'm John Baldino. Thanks for joining us here with Humareso as we recap last week's SHRM National event in Las Vegas. With me are some special guests, all of whom are part of Humareso, who also were there last week. We have Rick Litchko, who is the manager of HR administration at Humareso. We have Keith Enox, who's a senior HR consultant with Humareso. And we have the incomparable BJ Anderson, who is our director of HR operations.
The one and only.
The one and only. Thank God.
I was going to say.
The world can't handle more.
So I think probably to start with, if it's okay, could everybody give sort of context? How many, if any, right, previous SHRM national conferences have you been to? Whoever wants to just jump in to start.
You introduced me first, so I feel like I should go first.
Fair.
I was only at one other SHRM national conference, and it was actually in Las Vegas again. So this was my first ever return to SHRM and first ever return to Las Vegas.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
My conference actually was my first one was actually also in Vegas. Would have been I think it was 2009 if memory serves. So I've been coming to quite a few. Had a few years off, but was glad to be back for I think the first in 4 years.
BJ?
I think this is probably my seventh one. I used to go every year in my last role, but I think this is probably my seventh. I tried to count it when I was there.
And I don't know how many I've been to. That is this, like, something happens once you hit a certain number. I think for me, it's like SHRM National and like Billy Joel concerts. It's, once it crosses double digits, I'm like, I just don't think about it anymore. So what we want to chat a little bit about here is really just casually impressions, observations, learning moments. And so what I think would be good for us to start with might be what stood out to you, and that could be an observation. It certainly could be something that's learning related as well. But really, what stood out to you in this year's conference?
I think the sheer amount of people that were there really stood out. I mean, the one that I went to, the first one I went to was I think the first one in person after the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
And yes, there were a lot of people, but this one, they were shutting down rooms because they were at occupancy. You couldn't go to certain sessions. There were too many people. I think that's one thing that just kind of shocked me, even after seeing the huge size of the convention center there, that they were still shutting down certain sessions and not letting people in. It was just amazing to me.
And as we understand it, the context we were given is that there were 25,000 people there. For those that weren't there, that's a lot. It's the most ever, actually, that have been there. So for sure. And I probably should also mention, because again, I know there's people who are watching who may not have been there or ever been to a SHRM National Conference. You don't pre-register for sessions, right? They just tell you what the schedule is and you go. And there's obviously more than one choice during every learning or breakout session time frame. And if one becomes full, then you just got to move on to the other one. It's hard for them to know which one is going to, let's say, hit over others. And so you just don't pick in advance. That was good, Rick. What about the other two of you? What's generally speaking stood out for you?
For me, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, BJ.
For me, it's not something that's just specific to this one. It always amazes me with that many people and all that has happening, how well it works like a well-oiled machine. It's just clockwork. You know, we don't always see, obviously, there may be areas of challenges for them, but we don't see it. And it just amazes me with that many people, how things just roll the way they're supposed to roll.
Yeah, fair.
Absolutely. And for me, the same as Rick said, the size is just sort of overwhelming, but I think it really speaks to, the importance of this industry. And, it's a nice reaffirmation that a lot of employers value HR so much that they're willing to make this investment, because it's not a small investment. I mean, by the time you get people to travel there, you pay for the event itself, feed them and all of that. It's not a small investment, and so I think it really just speaks to the critical nature of the work that we do and the value that we can add to organizations. That 25,000 people all showed up for this thing and were there, passionate about it, and ready to just soak it all in.
Keith, I think, sorry, I know John probably has another question, but I think it's one of the other things that really stood out to me is really the passion that all the HR professionals that were there have for HR. I mean, you can really tell these people love what they do. They love supporting their organizations and the people that they work for. And you really get that feeling and kind of that encouragement just through their energy, just from being there.
100%. Every time I go, every year I go, for as many as I've been to, it always sort of re-energizes me. It always sort of fuels that passion, because we all we all know that there are times where you just feel like your batteries are at zero, and you still need to crank out more. And so this is it really is it really always gives me a charge every year I go, and for the exact reason you just said.
And I'm always, I don't know why, I don't want to say surprises me, but I forget how many steps you will put in at the conference. I mean, first of all, if you've not been to Vegas in a while, the Las Vegas Convention Center, all of those renovations that were being done over the last X amount of years are done. And so the north, south, west campus, all of that has been completed. And I mean, I was doing 23,000 plus steps, just a crazy amount, because we really had to walk from one side to the other because of how massive the attendance was.
Oh, don't forget the Tesla tube, though.
We did have that, right? I never got to do that. Did you do it?
I didn't. I did not.
I did it.
Right?
I did it. I loved it. We discovered it on the last day we were there, the day before the last day we were there, and we're going, why didn't we see this before?
So describe what it is, because not everybody knows what it is. What was it?
So it was the opportunity that you could come out of the front of one building, the West building, and go to a parking lot, stand in line, and a Tesla picks you up, takes you underground in a tunnel over to the other building. And you get there much faster than walking, and it's much nicer in a Tesla.
It is much nicer in a Tesla. And BJ had Tesla scooter, right? Didn't you use that Tesla scooter?
I kind of used it incorrectly.
She only hit 4
Meaning
people.
She didn't use it.
Yes, that's right, Keith. That's exactly right.
Despite our best efforts.
When we think about, I mean, obviously, I think it's important to identify some learning considerations, because, and I think, Keith, you said it really well a few minutes ago, there is, I think, the investment, right, that's being made by employers. And honestly, let's not forget, some people pay for all of this themselves because they are, their employer perhaps doesn't see the value, but they do, and they don't want to miss out. And they're doing it because of often the learning, right? There's things that I want to know or areas that I want to improve in. When you think about your experience in learning last week, what stands out for you? Nothing. Nobody learned anything.
This is the real stumper.
It seems like Humareso spent money well.
I mean, I did a lot of sessions more based around strategy and leadership, just because of where I am in my career right now, being only about a year or so into a management position. That's more of what I wanted to focus on. But one of the things that I did that was more on the tactical side of things was a session about bias in job descriptions. And it was really interesting to me because there were a couple different words that the presenter brought up, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, that doesn't have a bias or a gender bias or anything. Like, and the way they went on to explain some of these things, I was like, oh, well, okay, I guess if you do look at it like that, and it really kind of makes you think, because it's not just you who is reading this. So while the word rock star doesn't necessarily give off some like male energy to me, it could to all these other people. So it's really something to just be super thoughtful about. And that was one of the more tactical like sessions that I was in, but it really stood out to me and was one that I kind of just threw on my schedule as almost a filler.
Good.
That's a good point, Rick, because there are a lot of those, looking for, energetic person,
Right.
might have an age component or insinuate an age component.
Mhm.
And, a lot of times I think companies get themselves into this purely by accident. They don't have any idea.
Right.
But it can send a certain message that might, unfortunately dissuade someone from thinking they might be a fit for it. And, could be someone with a wealth of experience that maybe thinks that, they're not the type that is being looked for. So it's a good point.
Right. Yeah. And just to piggyback off of that too, I mean, one of the things that I've been told before, and I think John you might have been the one that said it, was, oh, we're like a family. Well, that's not always a positive thing for all of these people. So where, oh, you might have grown up with the great family upbringing, that's not necessarily something that everybody's looking forward to when joining a new job. So it's more of just those kind of like examples that this whole thing was going into. But he had people actually pull out job descriptions that they had that they were working on and read from them, and he would be like, oh, stop right there. Like,
Wow.
This is one thing that you should probably not use. Or, okay, does anybody else want to go through something or have any ideas? And it was very interactive though, but it was good because it was engaging, and yet you had something physical to really essentially take home with you because you were working off of your own job description.
And I like when HR people are brave, right? Because the first person who gets like, I don't want to say torn apart, but corrected.
Yeah.
The
ice is broken.
Yeah. And you would think, and I know this happens in other industries, somebody's like, well, I'm not going next, right? Like, I'm not going to share. But HR people, oftentimes it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm getting free advice here, right? So let me pull my job description out, and I'm not afraid to do so. So that was a good one. BJ or Keith, any learning stand out to you in particular?
There's one that I probably will never forget in life because I felt as if she was sitting in my office watching me every day. And it was on the same topic, HR folks as strategists in the organization and being forward focused and such. And she was one of the very first things she talked about was getting in our email box and just sort of focusing there most of the day because we got so much coming in and out and other tactical items that we need to be doing. And instead, we're not focused on the future and how we should divide our day. One of the questions she asked was, what's the best part of your day? What is when you're most able to focus? And you should set aside that portion of the day to actually work on strategic issues and problems and future ideas and such, and get those done in that time frame when you're thinking the way you should.
Awesome.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Keith, how about you?
I tended to focus more on sessions that had that focused on culture and strategic leadership. And one of the common threads, not even just from the presenters, but also in talking with individuals around me about the fact that employees are much more willing to speak up about what they want and expect out of an employer than I think has been the case in recent years. And um, it's incumbent upon employers to we need to step up our game if we're going to hold on to people, because people aren't just going to put up with what they may be used to maybe used to put up with just because they need the job. They're not willing to do that anymore, which is a good thing for them. And it's the way it should be. So it really, I think it's incumbent to us as leaders and as HR to rethink the way that we've been doing things. And one of the common, I think almost every culture presentation or every session, it talked about the dangers of, the way we've always done it, and you need to scrap that. You need to look at everything from a fresh point of view, because what used to work before, majority of the time is not always going to cut it now.
Thank you. I I found it to be kind of overlapping a little bit. The idea of there were some sessions that got into, you HR person have been looked at as a necessary partner through the pandemic. And so we really had the opportunity to celebrate HR differently, because during the pandemic, especially the height of it, we were needed. We had to come up with procedures and help people to feel cared for. And so it was sort of this compliance and culture meeting that had HR right in the center. And now, as that has waned, there was lots of conversation around, now I'm kind of falling back into how I used to be treated, or how I used to be looked at. They don't see me with as much necessity in talent conversations. And it really, it's a challenging consideration. And I think that there were some speakers that did a great job of kind of coming back to say, well, what is it that you're bringing to the table as far as strategy is concerned? You can't, and you all know that I'll start gagging, right? You can't be desperate for this seat at the table and then say, I finally got it during COVID and now I'm losing it. Well, in many ways, you may never have had it, right? And so how do I really show that what I'm able to do and capable of doing is a broader view of how we approach the balance of culture and compliance and bring those things together? That's the starting point you get to work from. So I think there were a couple of speakers that did a really nice job of trying to identify that, call it out, and then give you some considerations as how to move forward. So that I stood out to me. I was also going to ask, though, about Janet Jackson, which I know that not everybody went to. So I want to talk first about BJ, because she got into a physical altercation with some people, and I want to see how that went. There was a fight, right? Isn't that what you messaged me, that there was a fight in your seats?
Well, there was, yes. And when we first went in, we were originally told that if anybody came running in, they would be immediately expelled, because you're supposed to walk and be respectful. In some cases, that didn't happen, and there were a few folks. Karen was actually the one that almost had the fight with some folks because of how they came in, and they were pushing people and running past people to get to the front of the stage. So that was the biggest concern. But I was super impressed with Janet. It's not from my era, but even though she wasn't, I was just really, really surprised by how great that show was.
You hear this from her era. I
Not
don't
my era.
Even mean?
I was more Michael than I was Janet.
They were both in the 80s. What are you talking about?
I was more Michael than Janet.
Okay. All right. Well, fine.
I saw Janet more of an actress at that time than I did as a singer.
A lot of people knew her early on, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, she did a great job, didn't she?
She did an awesome job. Yeah.
Awesome. She was awesome. And her background dancers, holy crap.
I know.
Amazing.
I know. Yes.
I was too busy taking down the casinos at that point.
Oh, yes. And how did the takedown of the casinos go?
60 whole bucks. I'm up. Let's go.
Oh, $60. Look at this guy. Lunch for
Rolling in
you
it.
tomorrow, BJ. Make sure he pays for it.
Count on it.
So, but Rick, how much did you have to lay on the line to win that $60? That's what I think we really want to know.
That I'd rather not talk about.
I will say, I'm going to give you all a minute to prep for this. I wonder too, on the other side of it, if there weren't learning opportunities that you feel were missed, topics that weren't talked about, or maybe as deeply as they could have been. And we're not complaining about any particular person, so we're not going to say names. We're talking about topic areas, content areas that, again, either could have been delved into deeper, or you didn't find it all. Honestly, you didn't see much of it happening. But while you're thinking of that, I will mention for those that weren't there, because I know that there could be sort of a Disneyland, Disney World kind of perspective to things. Every session, even the expo hall, it doesn't dump out into the SHRM store, right? Where you're like forced to feel like you're forced to have to like buy stuff. They really do spread this out. And honestly, I spoke with somebody on the last day who never set foot like in the SHRM store or the certification lounge, like never even came over to that end of things, just because they had so many other areas that they wanted to get to. It was well spread out. So again, visually, you don't even have to go to the expo hall if you didn't want to. I mean, everything is kind of spread out enough that you can find your own space and do your own thing, and not have to sort of just jump on with what everybody else was doing. Except obviously, if you want to be a part of happy hour on the first night and have free drinks, like you had to go into the expo hall. So if you chose not to, that was on you. Okay, learning opportunities that were missed or not talked about as deeply as you may have liked. Any of you have anything that comes to mind?
I don't know if this was just me not seeing it or missing it or what, but I felt like there was a lot around technology and the use of it and ChatGPT and how it's going to take everyone's jobs and not take everyone's job. But I think they could have went into, or there could have been some other sessions just around technology fatigue. I think a lot of everything is going into so much tech that I think a lot of people are missing that human aspect of things. So I feel like there could have been something a little more around the lines of taking a step away from technology and just reconnecting with the people that you're working with. But again, I might have missed something because there are so many different sessions that you can sign up for.
But that's a good point.
Something that I always struggle with through being, through having gone to a bunch of these now, is there's so much good stuff, and there's only so many time slots where you can get to a session. So invariably, I always miss things. I would have loved to have been able to attend an AI, because I do think there's a ton of learning to be done there and contextual knowledge to gain, but felt like other things sort of eclipsed that. So I mean, I don't know if there was anything that I feel was missing per se, other than just say I didn't personally get to everything I wanted to see, just by virtue of the conference being so large, and you can't get to them all.
Fair. BJ, anything for you that you either didn't see as a topic area?
No, I think I agree with Keith on that, because I had the same challenge. I had AI on my list of many things that I wanted to see, and every single time something would eclipse it that I like that word, by the way, eclipse it, that I wasn't able to get to any one of them. And I'm hoping that in looking at what has been coming in from SHRM, that I might have the opportunity to follow up on that.
It's always, I find the conference to be a challenge for those that are sitting in a more senior role. And I want to be thoughtful about how this is received. There's nothing wrong with tactical components of HR, right? How do I do benefits administration better? How do I handle these I-9s, right? The onboarding components, the systems management components. I mean, honestly, they have to be talked about all the time. That's not what I'm saying at all. However, those who may come who are at a more senior level, I can see that perhaps being a challenge for those who may be moving up, let's say, in HR and starting to feel like, I don't know if this is for me anymore. We're not getting enough stuff that has to do with strategy or transformational approaches to HR. It's not that there weren't any, but I don't know that we promote it enough within the conference. And I say we, not because I'm part of SHRM National, but I'm a SHRM member, right? So we can do a better job of making it clearer as to what tracks might be available that are towards that end of what you're looking for if you have a more senior role. I think that can be a missed opportunity at times for attendees. Any other thoughts? I want to put this up here too. I appreciate that someone shared this. So this link, for those of you watching, are for the slide decks for sessions, some of which make their way here. Now, that doesn't mean that you'll look at a slide deck for a topic area that you didn't get to go to, and the slide deck could really just be words, like a word on each slide, because the person's giving the content. It's not all on the slide deck. And honestly, good presentations, they don't put their whole presentation on the slide itself. So, take that with a grain of salt, whether there's something good there for you or not. But presentations.shrm.org.
I actually just downloaded one today, and I was like, this doesn't make sense at all, because it was exactly that. It was like there's just pictures and like 3 words on a slide. I was like, did I even go to this presentation?
Yeah.
And sometimes the slides do get changed around too. I mean, I was in a session with I think it was Sherry Harley, and she said literally this morning I just changed my slides because she went back through and it just wasn't quite what she was expecting or hoping. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, getting the slides is great because it may grab something that at least you can do some research into it. Maybe start following someone online and sort of get an idea for what their point of view is in that particular area. You can sort of piece it together. But it is tough because you never get the full story just by looking at the slides.
As we look to wrap up, with the varied attendance, right? Rick being on the less side than some of us in terms of number of annual conferences having attended. Why would you say this one is one to be at least considerate of? And again, this is no commercial for SHRM. I know, but from a content standpoint, is there something that you would say people should be thoughtful about this because if they go, this?
I think, the only thing I would say is it's definitely it's a learning curve. The first time you go, it's anxiety provoking because of how large it is. And so I would say for someone who's considering going to it for the first time, definitely do your homework and do some planning and get a sense for the layout. I've, have enough of these under my belt that I can kind of wing it. And it's less important, not less important, but it's, I spend less time on the prep than I maybe did when I was earlier in my career, having just starting to attend my first 1 or 2. So I would definitely say do your homework if you're newer to the conferences, because it's so darn big. It's if you can very easily miss things.
Yeah, that's a great point, though. I'm glad you said that.
I think if we're going the route of giving advice to like first timers or people that are newer to the conferences, I think one of the things that I would say is don't be afraid to sit by yourself, because someone will always talk to you, even if you're not the most outgoing. Sit down in that expo hall where you're getting your lunch and people just come up, hey, you mind if I sit here? Just strike up a conversation. If you go to a session and you get there a couple minutes early, some people might be on their phones, on their laptops, answering emails because work never stops, but they're there, they're going to talk to you, and they're going to have something that you can either benefit from or you could help them with, or something that you have in common. So don't be afraid to just put yourself out there.
Awesome. BJ, any thoughts? You don't
And
have to.
I think the prep is vital, though. I think it's important to make sure you know what it is that you're going to have access to from the learning side of things, and make sure that you prep yourself in your app or whatever it is that you download to, or documentation, to make sure that what you're looking for, you get to actually attend and take part in.
That's great.
And don't be afraid to take advantage of those networking happy hours, because drinks ain't cheap in Vegas.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that is super true. I would say, listen, the idea here for us is really just because we're a team of HR practitioners who had the privilege of being able to be there and hear all this content, right? And I think that one of the things, and somebody mentioned this in the chat as well, I think as you progress, as you move further in your career and you still go, yes, there are still sessions for you to be a part of. Don't think you know everything about I-9s, right? It doesn't hurt for you to still go into those sessions. But you're there, I think, in some ways as well, to sort of build a bridge to those that are up and coming, right? So those connections are really important. Look for those people who, like Rick said, are by themselves or are struggling to figure out how to start up conversation. Like those of us that have been around for a while, look to say hi to people and open that door for conversation. I think those connections are really important. Well, team, thanks so much. This was awesome. Easy peasy conversation. For those of you who are here with us live, thank you as well. This will be available after the fact. So we appreciate everybody for stopping by. Please follow us on all the socials at Humareso. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
So long.